He lost their third straight game on Tuesday and have now dropped 8 of their last 10. There's no silver lining here. They were bad on defense and even worse on offense, but hey, it's got to be Christmas Eve somewhere.
Somewhere. But not in Kaseya Center.
You are Locked On Heat, your daily Miami Heat podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
All right, welcome to Locked On Heat, your daily podcast on the Miami Heat, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. Whether you're tuning in on YouTube or on your favorite podcast app, thanks for making Locked On Heat your first listen every day. Join the Cookie Gang, become an everydayer. That means subscribing, tuning in every day, Monday through Friday, and signing up to the Everydayer Club with the link in the show notes. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. I'm Wes Goldberg, host of Locked On NBA Daily and Real GM Radio. I'm here with David Ramil. Both of us are credentialed Heat media members who cover this team every day and have resorted to drinking to deal with this current Heat losing skid.
We often do.
As we often do. Look, a bunch to get to today, including a deep dive into Bam's struggles. We'll answer some of your questions in the last segment. But we are recording this after the Heat's loss to the Raptors on Tuesday night. The Heat have now dropped 9 of their last 10 games. December has not been kind to those in Miami. Speaking specifically to this game, though, David, nothing was working in this one. They couldn't make shots. They couldn't stop the Raptors. They looked totally overwhelmed, I thought, by Toronto's physicality and speed. What stood out to you?
Yeah, a lot of the same. Miami fell flat early, off to a 16-3 start, and that was with them being on the losing end of that. And then I cursed them and a pox upon their house for making me believe that maybe they did care, that they did have something left to show because they wanted to eventually tie in the game. And they were like, no, we just wanted to show that we could tie it, that we want to be able to make it close, but not really. It was all just a mirage. And then from that point forward, it just got progressively worse and worse, falling apart in every aspect of the game, just gambling with passes, not playing well defensively, taking too many risks, not boxing out, not doing the little things. Yes, I think the physicality of Toronto was certainly a factor, but Miami simply did not have any kind of response. They didn't do anything particularly well, and they seemed kind of lackadaisical, a little disinterested. I would go so far as to say it was the worst loss of the year for Miami.
If you thought they had hit rock bottom, they just found another rock with another bottom in this one. This was as bad as they looked all year.
With a deeper bottom, yeah.
Correct, yeah. They hit rock bottom and then found a trench and then kept going down. What struck me about this game, David, is that you can't blame the lack of three-point shooting, right? Missing shots, the make or miss league part of it. You can't. There's some losses this year where you could blame that, as you can for every team in every season. You can't blame that tonight. You can't blame necessarily this star player just going off for the other team the way that Jalen Brunson went off the other night in Madison Square Garden. The process was as bad as the results were in this game for the Heat. And that's why, to me, it represented rock bottom. Teams have figured out this Heat offense and are forcing them into bad areas on the court. I don't care how quickly you're taking shots if they're the wrong shots. What really concerns me right now is Miami falling back into mid-range jumpers, which has been a problem for this team over the last couple of years. And I thought with this offense, the idea was, well, we'll just outrun teams to the rim so that we can get these shots on goal. And they entered tonight 14th in rim frequency percentage, which is a pretty good mark. 23rd on threes. That's something that you and I have been talking about all season, keeping an eye on. Like, this team does not take enough threes. That was true tonight and has been all season. But they're 10th in mid-range frequency. That's their highest share. Like, their highest ranking of all the between rim, mid-range, and threes. And they're not so over-indexed the way that they had been in the past, where it was almost impossible to have a good offense. This team is still league average in offensive rating. But in games like this, it really stood out to me how often they can sometimes just settle for mid-range jumpers. And you think about settling maybe as working the clock and kind of just falling into a mid-range jumper. But this team, again, is almost too happy to take mid-range jumpers as long as they happen quickly in the shot clock. And at some point, pace does not equal good offense if you're getting to those shots quickly, but if they're the wrong shots.
Absolutely. Look, only 18 assists tonight on 33 made field goals. So their ability to get to that pass, to get to their spots, was basically shut down. And I don't know if it's a lack of connectivity. I'll give some credit to Toronto because I think they do play a high level defense, and certainly
It's a good
they've
defense.
challenged Miami. Yeah, it's a good defense, and they've challenged Miami twice now in the last 2 games that they've played them. So that's certainly the case. I just also see Miami kind of discombobulated, and not entirely because of Toronto's defense. Like, certainly you can give credit and say, you know what, they played us tough. They didn't allow us to get to those easy looks, but Miami had no easy solutions. Nobody able to make them pay to get to the shots that they wanted. It seemed like they were constantly being forced off the 3-point line and weren't able to get to the rim either. And once they did, they really I don't know what their rim percentage was. It didn't feel, at least in watching it, not great.
I have the numbers right here. According to Cleaning the Glass, they shot 60% at the rim, which is not good. You'd expect that to be closer to 70%, which is where Toronto was. In terms of their total shots, they took 25 shots at the rim compared to 33 for Toronto. They took 27 mid-range shots compared to 15 for Toronto, and 29 three-pointers compared to 37 for Toronto. You dive deeper into those numbers, Toronto took more corner threes. Those are the best shot, the easiest three-pointer, right? Now, the Heat might come back to you and say, well, yeah, we took 27 mid-range shots, but of those, most were short mid-range shots. So free throw line, jumper area, and down between that area and the restricted area. 24 of Miami's 27 mid-range shots were short mid-range jumpers. Only 3 were those really, really inefficient long mid-range jumpers where you might as well just take that step back and make a 3, or take a 3 rather. I still don't love that, right? In terms of an overall share of your offense. Those Jaime Jaquez Jr. floaters and turnaround jumpers are good. You don't want that to be that much of your offense. The Bam Adebayo free throw line jumper. We'll talk about Bam more later on, but you don't want that to be such a chunk of your offense. You need to get more shots at the rim, and they're just not doing it. And by the way, I don't want to just talk about their offense all the time. The defense was horrible in this game, and I don't want to let that side of the ball off the hook either. As discombobulated as I've seen them in a long time, when I said that they looked overwhelmed with the speed and physicality, the Raptors looked like they were just running everything faster. They were getting into their screens faster, their cuts faster, their dives faster, everything faster. And there were so many times in this game, which is very uncharacteristic of this Heat team, where they were scrambling defensively, miscommunications, way too many wide open looks for Toronto. You could argue they were as bad, maybe even worse defensively as they were offensively.
Yeah, I think that's certainly the case. Like I said before, they seemed like they were taking a lot of risks there. A lot of times where they came to help, leaving somebody wide open. The rotations were not crisp. They seem sluggish, like almost like, oh,
Yeah.
I thought you were going to pick them up, and that just led to wide open shots, or not sliding well as somebody was slashing to the basket. No help defense whatsoever there. So they were either overcommitting on perimeter shots or not committing enough on drives to the basket, and that wound up leading to a lot of wide open looks, or easier shots anyway, for Toronto. So not great. I've got this overall feeling, and I want to ask this now while we're still on this topic. We asked, I think, a few weeks ago, what version of this team is more realistic? What we saw earlier in the season when their offense was as good as it was, and their defense was at a high level, or what we've seen over the last 10 to 12 games? Because I'm starting to think that now it's more like the reality of what this team actually was. And I can't help it, because I was wearing those rose-colored glasses watching this team perform and play so well. And look, for our fans that might not believe it, they were the talk of the NBA. They were getting that kind of buzz that you would feel about teams that are exciting to watch. They were fun. It's like, hey, how about that Heat team? Their offense was ridiculous. They were getting great individual performances from guys like Jaime, Powell. Everybody was stepping up. There was joy, there was fun, there was excitement about this group. And it just seems like that never even happened. It's almost like this is a completely different team. And I can't speak to any one thing that might have been the nail in the coffin to put that side into the 6 feet under. But here we are. And it feels like a completely different group. So which of these two teams that we've seen so far? Because I've never seen something so dramatic where you see something for the start of the season and then something completely different afterwards. That's usually the hallmark of a really good team, which it might be. It might just be a really bad team, but it's hard to kind of differentiate given what we saw earlier in the season.
I'm glad you asked this question, because it's the question I just submitted our short for our show to Lockdown NBA Game Night, and it's the same question I asked. I was like, which team is this? Is it the one from the 14-7 start or this one? Now, the 14-7 start, that's 21 games. This is really a 10-game sample, but it's a big enough sample, and there's no, like, it's not a Tyler Herro thing, right? Like, funny how that conversation has just gone away with Herro being out of the lineup and the offense and the team's still struggling. It's not a defense that you're facing. It's not an opponent thing, right? They've faced bad opponents and good opponents and have struggled in both types of games. I think it's back to the point that I brought up at the start of the show, David. I think teams have figured them out. You're seeing, even in this game, for example, Toronto just getting back so fast in transition and just getting in front of that Heat offense and not allowing those leak outs or those run outs or those hit-ahead passes. They've just gotten it scouted. And when all else fails, they don't have that guy that can just turn a bad possession into a good possession. And maybe that guy needs to be Bam Adebayo, whose struggles are only becoming a bigger problem as the Heat continue to struggle. We'll talk about what we saw tonight and why that suggests that maybe Bam's struggles are only going to continue.
Today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. This episode brought to you by Prize Picks. The holiday season is one of the best time for sports, bowl games, big basketball matchups, playoff pushes. It's all happening at once. And while we're all making choices every day, one of the most fun places to make the right call is Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the easiest way to get in on daily fantasy. You just pick more or less on at least 2 player projections. You lock in your lineup and you're in the game. It's simple, fast, and available in 45 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Prize Picks has added an extra layer of excitement to the holiday sports schedule because you can create a lineup in less than a minute, and the app makes the whole process smooth and intuitive. You can choose from a huge range of unique stats: fantasy score, field goal attempts, free throws made, turnovers, whatever fits your particular strategy. And the early payout feature is a great bonus. Right about now, during the holidays, you're going to want your cash. Well, guess what? When your lineup starts strong, you may even get the option to cash out early. Deposits and withdrawals are quick and easy, which keeps everything flowing. So download the Prize Picks app today and use the code LOCKEDONNBA. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNBA to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, it's good to be right. We'll be right back.
Thanks again for making Locked On Heat your first listen of the day. Thank you for making the Locked On Podcast Network the #1 sports podcast network. You already live your team every day. Now take it up a level and go ad-free. Join the Everydayer Club today and get Locked On Heat with no interruptions, members-only Discord access, and more, all for just $5 a month or $50 a year. Go to lockedonheat.supercast.com or check the link in the show notes to learn more. We got to talk about Bam. 4 of 11 tonight, 9 points in a must-win game. And these must-wins are starting to get a lot closer to must-wins. It is still only December, so we don't want to overreact too much here, but this is getting worse. And Bam's struggles continue to be a big part of that. He's having a hard time finding his place in this offense. I think that much is clear. And the Heat made an effort to get Bam involved, and that to me was an acknowledgement that Bam's struggles are A, happening, and B, a problem.
Right.
And so the first, I thought, 5 minutes of this game were basically you could rename the first 5 minutes of this game the get Bam going minutes, because that's all the Heat were trying to do. And I actually think that kind of took them out of a rhythm a little bit, or prevented them from getting into a rhythm at all in this game. Right. Bam looked tight, just unsure where to get his shots. When he did get his shot, he was a little, again, like too tight, not decisive enough.
Yep.
And I don't know what needs to change for him. I do know that this offense doesn't do him any favors. And for, as much as I was praising him during the 14-7 start for still averaging 19 points per game, despite the fact that this offense clearly does not favor him, it's becoming an issue to the point now where they might have to consider running more pick and roll or something to try to get him going. Now, it's not going to help if he's not aggressive the way that he hasn't been aggressive the last few games, but at some point you just get the yips, and the only way to get out of the yips is to keep shooting. Eventually he'll come out of this slump. But even outside the slump part of this, David, this is, to me, is a process over results thing, and the process doesn't look good either for him.
I think they did try to run more pick and roll, and
they
just couldn't capitalize on those possessions either. Like, I don't know if the connection is there with it either, Yakashonis running point or with the ball in his hand, or Norm Powell running pick and roll with Bam. Like, the passes all seemed a little off. And there was one possession where it did work out, where Powell drove the ball and then kicked it out to Bam was being guarded by Sandru. What was it? Mamouche Keleshvili. Yeah, and Bam wound up rising up for, I don't know, a 17-foot jumper anyway. So it's not like he's cutting to the rim and making the most of those PNRs. And Sandro Mamu, as rangy as he might be, not good enough defensively to limit what Bam Adebayo is capable of doing. And so the criticism is getting louder and louder, and it's well deserved. So he's not making the most of these opportunities. I don't even know that it's the offense. I think it's not helping, but he's not making the most of whatever touches he gets. Like, he is just not knocking down those shots. He's not getting to the rim effectively. And I don't think it's necessarily based on what we've seen from the offense. That might not be helping, but we're not seeing him be able to maximize whatever opportunities he does get either. And so that's a problem, because I don't think the offense has ever necessarily been run for him. And he's always, at the very least, been able to make a decent amount of shots. That has not been the case this season, and especially over the last few games.
So for those watching on YouTube, I'm throwing up Bam's shot chart for tonight's game, and it's ugly not only because of all the red X's, but it's ugly to me more, again, process over results here of where these shots are coming from. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mid-range jumpers, 3 shots at the rim within the restricted area in this game. He's doubled the mid-range shots than he's getting at the basket. That's bad math. That's bad process. And at some point, I don't really care. If he would have made a bunch of those mid-range shots and his overall stat line would have looked good, the process still would have been bad. And just as many games as you have that are good that way, you'll have as many, if not more, that are bad because the math does not work when you're shooting that way and when your shots are coming that way. I will say this. Toronto did a really good job of, not just with Bam, but every time anybody got the ball in the paint, sending an immediate double to try to get the ball out of hands. And Miami looked completely unprepared for that scheme defensively that the Raptors were running. Whether it was Jaime, Bam, heck, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins, if they got 2 feet in the paint, the double came, and it came early, and it forced the ball out of their hands. And what could have been a good shot quickly became a worse shot for the Heat on offense because they didn't have a counter to it.
No, go ahead, please.
But to your point, Bam's got to be better. And it's the part where, okay, cool. The matchup, the scheme, the whatever, the other center on the other team. You just run out of excuses. And I'd like to see them run a little bit more pick and roll to try to get him lobs. But to your point, maybe they don't have that guy that could throw that lob right now, especially with Tyler Herro out, who's their best pick and roll player right now. I wanted to see them run more clear outs to get him in isolation to see if he could just dribble by a guy or use his size in the post. But Toronto is running those doubles and forcing the ball out of his hands every time they put him in that spot. He's not playing. There's no space for him to operate in. Yeah. But even when he does have that space, it's not great. What they really need to do is amp up the defense and get him in transition. Bam's best moments were in transition in this game. But you also can't rely on that as a star player for all your shots to kind of come in unscripted transition opportunities. You've got to find a way if you're Bam. And he just hasn't. He didn't tonight, and he hasn't lately.
Yeah. I don't know. It doesn't feel like there's a solution either. I mean, again, maybe overly simplistic. Oh, just knock down shots. But I don't know. There seems to be something wrong. And this feels like a game which I wish that we had been there in the arena to ask specifically, like, what's going on with Bam Adebayo, and to see what Eric Spoelstra says about it, whether he gives some kind of generic answer, kind of covering for him, or whether or not he hints at something, whether or not Bam says whether or not there's something wrong. Like, even if it's an admission that there might be something wrong physically, because we've talked about this. It does not look like he is as explosive as he's been in the past. And in previous seasons, especially earlier in his career, you could account for those kind of games where he wasn't being aggressive, especially if he's going up against a taller, longer shot blocker or somebody who might harass him and keep him from getting to his looks. That's not the case. He was being guarded by somebody who, I mean, quite honestly, is a second stringer in the NBA and not a particularly good one either. If that had been Jakob Poeltl out there, I still would have expected Bam to be much more aggressive. He was being guarded by his backup, and he was not really taking advantage of those opportunities, not creating those shots the way he has. And I just don't know what's going on. I mean, look, Kel'el Ware struggled too. So maybe it was more schematic than anything else, just kind of limiting what Miami's bigs were able to accomplish, or at least get those easy looks. But this is no excuse. Bam has just struggled too much, too often over the last few games, and maybe over the course of this entire season. And he needs to find a way to be more impactful.
Bam is averaging 11.8 points per game on 37.5% shooting over the last 4 games. That's bad.
That's bad.
Yeah, it's very bad. And I want to be clear about this because you and I have defended Bam a lot in our time on this show.
Sure.
What we're asking of Bam right now is not to do the thing that so many Heat fans want him to do to quote unquote earn that max contract, which is to average 25 points per game in addition to all the world-class defensive stuff that he does. What we're asking Bam to do is just do what he had been doing for the last 3 or 4 years. If he's averaging 19 or 20 points per game, then I think there's less of a concern. But this is, to me, a step back for Bam in a way that is problematic. And again, lends itself to a greater conversation of, is this offense not only failing to maximize Bam? Not that any offense needs to be run through Bam, but there's a difference between running your offense through Bam and running an offense that hurts Bam, right? Those two things are different. And right now it maybe feels like this offense is hurting Bam more than it's helping him. And if you're losing games, then it means that the trade-off isn't worth it, right? We talked about this when in the start of the season where we acknowledged, hey, this offense is not best for Bam. And I was giving credit to Bam for being like cool with it as long as the Heat were winning games. Now the Heat are no longer winning games, and it begs the question now, is it time for a scheme change? Listener questions are coming up next.
Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. During basketball season, there's nothing like being in the building. The energy, the crowd, that first big run that gets everyone on their feet. Fans want to be there for those moments, not stuck refreshing screens or guessing what tickets are really going to cost. And that's where Game Time comes in. The Game Time app gives fans the advantage back, making it incredibly easy to score amazing tickets. Fast, simple, and without the guesswork. You can browse the Game Time app, and it's straightforward and intuitive. Finding tickets takes just a few taps. Seeing the view from your seat before buying makes choosing tickets easy and confident. Prices include fees upfront, so the total's clear from the start. Features like zone deals help unlock great seats at even better value. Whether it's an NBA game or another live event, everything is right there in one place. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA, and that's LOCKEDONNBA. And you get $20 off your first purchase, $20 off. Who couldn't use that? Download the Game Time app today and get in on the action. We'll be right back.
Let's go to the text line. You can get text from us and submit questions for post-game shows like this with the link in the show notes, or just text 786-998-7029. Cody writes in, is it time for an offensive scheme change to flow into a heavier pick and roll ball movement? The high tempo scheme has been halted, and the pick and roll seems to be easier to set up. David, a continuation in the conversation we're kind of having just now. I don't know that it's time to ditch the uptempo scheme altogether. And I say that mainly for two reasons. Number one, well, you already installed this one, so what are you going to do if not, right? It's very hard to just change your offense on the fly and install a new scheme, especially when the one you were running is sort of as dramatic as it had been. It's not easy to just tweak some things and now all of a sudden it looks different. And two, if you want to run more pick and roll, who's running it? And that's the kind of key problem that I think this Heat team has. You could blame coaching, you can blame the scheme, and certainly we're talking about the scheme and maybe running more pick and roll, and I do think that there's tweaks that they can make, but at the end of the day, when you don't have an offensive player who can carry your offense regardless of scheme, you're kind of finished in today's NBA. It is really hard to win a lot of games without that kind of player. The NBA is still a star-driven league, and right now the Heat do not have an offensive star. And without that offensive star, it's really hard to put together a consistent offense. It's kind of the same problem as the Heat have had in the past. When Jimmy Butler is taking regular season games off, they don't have that star player, and that offense ends up back in the bottom 10. Right now, the Heat's offense entering at least tonight, they were 14th in offensive rating. That continues to drop. If they keep playing like this, they will be back in the bottom 10 in offensive rating despite the tempo.
Yeah, no offense will work, especially when you're not shooting well from the perimeter. And so I think you've got to find a way to be able to knock down those shots. Like the fast tempo offense works so well because they were hitting their shots at such a high rate. And it seems like everybody across the team has cooled off dramatically, with the exception of Kel'el, who wasn't able to knock down his shots tonight. But you can't look at him as the problem necessarily. I think
Norm
it's
Powell
just,
was also bad tonight. We should at least not,
That's-
instead of harping everything on Bam and those guys. So yeah, Powell. Yeah, go ahead.
I know. I think that's the key right there. It's like you can excuse a lot of what you see or don't see from Bam because somebody else had previously stepped up in those opportunities. They just didn't get that kind of outing from anybody. Wiggins struggled too. He was 5 of 11 for the floor.
Yeah.
Kel'el was 2 of 8, 6 of 17 from Norm Powell, 1 of 6 from Davion Mitchell. That starting lineup was horrific. Nobody played well. The Miami was even only close because Jaime Jaquez wound up playing pretty well at 21 points and 9 of 16 overall. But other than that, they just didn't get any kind of really solid offensive contribution from anybody on that roster other than Jaime. So look, again, it's hard to differentiate between whatever Toronto's defense was able to do, and you give them credit, but Miami's offense has struggled a lot lately, and they looked even worse than that they have all season. So as far as the schematic change, I don't know how much of a difference it's going to make. Like, you can run PNR, and who's going to be the ball handler in those situations? Who's going to be able to create those opportunities or take advantage of those looks? I'm not sure that they have that person on the roster. And even still, you want to be able to kick out to a shooter and be able to at least have some kind of confidence that maybe you'll knock down that shot. That doesn't seem likely either. So Miami's woes are just getting worse here. And I guess the silver lining, if you want to try and even find one, is, again, hope that maybe Tyler Herro can provide a boost. A very different conversation that we were having just a couple of weeks ago when people were pointing at him, myself included, and saying that maybe he had disrupted something, but it seems like the problem was much more systemic and not necessarily, not even related at all to Tyler or his return.
Yeah, at the risk of taking a victory lap on two things, I guess I was right about Tyler Herro, and when I flagged this issue on our Thanksgiving episode, some people criticized me for being like, what are you talking about? This Heat team is rolling. Like, they could totally, like, think about the Pistons in the early 2000s. Like, those teams were going to the finals without a superstar player. And I said, I'm like, it's not, like, that was 20 years ago. Like, that's a different NBA. Like, none of that stuff applies to this NBA anymore. You need a star player to carry you. And as great as Norm Powell was playing like a star player at that point, Norm Powell, as great as he has been for the Heat, despite this off night for him, he's not a star player. He's not, and even 24 points per game sounds like a lot. Look how many guys are averaging 28, 29, 30 points per game in the league. That's what it is. That's the bar now. And the Heat just don't have anybody capable of hitting that level. Maybe Tyler Herro's return eventually does help. I mean, the injuries are not necessarily something that inspires a ton of confidence here. But, I do think that at least having him as a 3-level scorer will help a little bit. But it does seem like this is more a roster problem in terms of their overall struggles than schematic problem. Let's go to our next question. William writes in, we're not playing through our best player, Kel'el Ware. Did you think that was an issue tonight for the Heat, David, not playing through Kel'el Ware? 21 minutes on 2 of 8 shooting for 5 points for Kel'el, 9 rebounds.
Ooh. I don't know if I don't know that I can anoint him the best player on this team. Like, he's had his moments, but I think he's still struggling. I think he's still a guy figuring it out. What would they have done differently? Would they have just tried to get him going? Would he have been able to get those looks at the rim? It feels like a lot of his good games are kind of built on his ability to knock shots down from the perimeter too, to be able to supplement his overall offensive repertoire there. He was just 1 of 3 in his opportunities, only played 21 minutes as a starter. So I don't know how much more they could have done. Like, it wasn't necessarily foul trouble. He, like everybody else in the starting lineup, just couldn't seem to get any kind of semblance of a consistent offense going. So should Miami have run their offense through Kel'el Ware? I don't even know how to answer that. Like,
Kel'el's not a run through guy. He's a run to guy. You don't run your offense through Kel'el. He's not facilitating for you. He averages a quarter of a dribble per touch. This is not a guy who moves the ball. The ball gets moved to him. Now, maybe that's overall what maybe I'm nitpicking here. But again, Toronto did a really good job taking away those lobs, taking away that dunker spot action, all that stuff. The Heat still got to figure out ways to do it, but it's related to the point we made before. When you're not getting out in trend, you're not getting stops, you're not getting out in transition, you're not letting Kel'el run in the open floor, you don't have the guy that could set that up. It's really hard to just, as easy as it seems sometimes, to just throw the ball in that general direction and let Kel'el go up and grab it. There is a little bit more to it, even though it seems like maybe it's not all the time. Also, Kel'el, it was not his best was not Kel'el's best game defensively. I thought he gave up some points, especially in that second quarter run for him and the rest of that second unit. It wasn't pretty. Lander writes in, did Asia steal Bam's skill Space Jam style? What happened to him recently? It's as good as a theory as I've got. I think it's mostly the offensive scheme. I wouldn't blame Asia Wilson for this.
I hope nobody even. I think maybe if anybody suggested, hopefully it's completely 100% jokingly. But
I think this is a joke. Yeah,
I should hope so. Like, I mean, look, because I know
from our community, as nuanced as they are.
I mean, I don't know if you're being sarcastic or not.
I don't know.
You know, you got Rachel Nichols already talking about Oklahoma City Thunder and Sam Presti scouting their future child and things of that sort.
So
it's
dumb.
like,
She stole that from a Twitter joke and then used it as material. Whatever. I'm not gonna go down.
we won't even touch on that. It's just
we don't do that.
yeah,
Next
the
question.
personal
Malachi
lives.
writes in.
Don't let it blend in.
No questions. Just really disappointed with this Heat team right now. This Heat team literally stinks right now. Not fun to watch at the moment. Anyway, hope y'all have a Merry Christmas. Billy writes in, this season has gone from so optimistic to so disappointing so fast. Honestly, I don't want to be overreacting, but do you see any way they turn this around without a major roster move? Cameron writes in, how do I get my joy back watching this team? The answer is simple. They start winning games. Maybe they start making shots again, and it coincides with the right team. My concern right now is they were hitting shots against Boston and the Knicks, and they couldn't win those games. They really only are able to win games against bad teams right now. And that, when you look at the schedule, holds true for the entire season at this point. Really. I mean, they do have some nice wins here and there. But against the top competition, they have not played well. And I do think that there is a roster problem. And I think there's a lot of really good role players on this team. I think there's a really good second banana in Bam and a third guy in Norm Powell, perhaps, and Tyler Herro when he's healthy. But they just don't have that guy. And I hate to make it so simple, David, but I just keep going back to that.
I mean, every team needs it. Every team needs it. When you want those players to be able to play their complementary roles over the course of the season, you're going to have your big game here, your big game there from X player. That's kind of, as you said, a second banana. And that's fine. I mean, look, a recent opponent for the New York Knicks, Jalen Brunson. Like, Karl Anthony Towns will have his moment. Josh Hart will have his moment. You know, OG Anunoby will have his moment.
Bridges.
But, yeah, Bridges, et cetera, you're right. But Jalen Brunson is a guy who needs to carry that team, and that's pretty consistent with everything. Look, Toronto is a bit of an aberration, and I still wouldn't call them necessarily a powerhouse, although they clearly outplayed Miami in their two recent meetings. But they don't have that star player either, although maybe Scotty Barnes is as close as it gets, although he just doesn't seem like that top level scorer.
Yeah, they don't have that guy.
They don't have that guy. So
they're not that much better than Miami. Like, where's Toronto going? You know what I mean? Like, they're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, at least in the standings, they're certainly holding serve right now, but that could change. Like, Toronto was where Miami's was right now, and that's
a 2.5 game difference in the standings. I mean, to your point, all is not lost in the standings. Like, Toronto is at 4th; they're 2.5 games away from the Heat. The Heat can still finish a top, even 4 seed in the Eastern Conference. That is doable, but they got to turn things around, and they got to do it quickly here because these must-win games are starting to become must-win games for the Heat. They have a couple of days off, including Christmas Day, before they play again on Friday in Atlanta. That's going to do it for us today and really for the rest of the week, unless something crazy happens here. We're going to enjoy our holiday. Thanks for tuning in today at Locked On Heat. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Heat so you get all of the latest episodes. Find us on Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Heat. If Locked On Heat made your Spotify Wrapped, prove it on social media to secure a free month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social platform. We'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free and exclusive access to a members-only Discord channel. If you already tried doing it but didn't get that promo code sent to you, do it again and just make sure that you're tagging the national Locked On Podcast Network account in addition to the Locked On Heat account. You want to tag both of those to get that free month of the Everydayer Club. You're not going to want to miss that opportunity. For those of you on video, we send you to our first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make your second listen Locked On NBA Daily.